My sister stole my husband and had his baby, then my whole family abandoned me, but now I'm rich, engaged, and refuse to forgive them. My sister stole my husband and had his baby. Then my whole family abandoned me, but now I'm rich, engaged, and refuse to forgive them. I'm a 27-year-old female, sitting here thinking about my life, and realizing, I've never really talked about how much my childhood shaped me. So, here goes. I grew up in a middle-class family in the Midwest. You'd think that would mean we were pretty normal. But when it came to favoritism, my family made it painfully obvious who the star of the show was. And it wasn't me. My sister, Veronica, a 30-year-old female, was the golden child. She was blonde, confident, and the apple of everyone's eye. I'm not saying she didn't deserve some of the attention. She was talented in her own ways. But the way my parents treated her compared to me, it was like night and day. I can't even remember a time growing up where I didn't feel like the backup plan. Let me give you a few examples. When Veronica decided she wanted to take ballet lessons, my parents signed her up at the best dance studio in town. They'd sit through her rehearsals, buy her all the fancy gear, and take her out for ice cream after every recital. Me? I wanted to join an art class when I was 10. I was super into sketching and begged my mom to sign me up for a local program. She told me, maybe next year, sweetheart. We're stretched thin right now. Next year came and went, and guess what? No art class. Instead, Veronica got piano lessons. Then there was the whole birthday thing, for Veronica's 16th birthday. My parents got her a car, not brand new or anything, it was a used sedan, but still, a freaking car. When I turned 16, I didn't even bother asking for something like that. What I got was a small cake from the grocery store and a card that said, "We're so proud of you, Elena." Proud of what? Surviving another year as the family's invisible child? Graduation was the same story. When Veronica graduated high school, my parents threw this big party. They rented out a banquet hall, invited half the town, and made a huge deal out of it. When it was my turn, we had a small barbecue in the backyard. And it felt more like a let's get this over with kind of event. My dad actually said, "Well, we already did the big party for Veronica, so this is just more low-key." What really stung was how they handled college. I worked my butt off in high school. I had straight A's, volunteered, and got into one of the top programs for fragrance chemistry. It was my dream to create custom perfumes. When I told my parents the good news, they looked underwhelmed. My mom was like, "That's great, but we can't help much with tuition. Veronica's MBA payments are still a lot." Veronica had moved back home after college because she didn't land her dream job right away. My parents bent over backward to make her comfortable. They turned the guest room into her temporary space, aka her second apartment, helped her with her bills, and even paid for her to go to a coding boot camp. Meanwhile, I worked 2 part-time jobs to afford school and rent, no help, no handouts, just me grinding it out while they acted like Veronica's personal cheer squad. When I came home to visit every now and then, little things showed how much they favored her. Veronica would casually mention she needed new clothes for a job interview, and my mom would take her on a shopping spree. I'd save up to buy a single pair of jeans, and my mom would say, "Oh, didn't you just buy clothes last month?" Or if I needed a ride somewhere while I was in town, they'd act like I was asking for the world, but when Veronica wanted to borrow the car, no hesitation. There was also this weird habit my parents had of brushing off my achievements. When I got an internship at a local fragrance company, I was so excited to tell them. I called during dinner, and my mom's first response was, "That's nice. Did you hear Veronica has a second interview for that marketing job?" Like, cool, but can I get 5 seconds to talk about my life? I remember one Christmas that really solidified how much of an afterthought I was. My parents always went all out with gifts for Veronica, designer bags, gadgets, you name it. That year, she got this expensive new watch and a custom leather bag for work. I got socks and a $25 Target gift card. And the worst part? They acted like it was equal. My mom literally said, "We spent the same amount on you both." Sure, Mom. The favoritism wasn't just annoying, it messed with my self-esteem. I constantly felt like I wasn't good enough. Like no matter what I did, Veronica would always be the one they cared about more. And the thing is, Veronica didn't seem to notice or care. She'd bask in the attention, and I'd just exist. It wasn't until I was older that I realized how much this dynamic shaped me. I worked harder than I probably needed to because I felt like I had something to prove. I wanted to be seen, to matter. But at the same time, I learned to be independent, because I couldn't rely on anyone else, not even my own family. I don't think my parents were trying to be cruel. I think they just genuinely believed Veronica needed more attention because she was more, whatever. More outgoing, more ambitious, more their idea of success. But it doesn't make it right. I'm sharing this now because I know I'm not the only one who grew up feeling like the second choice. And if you've been there, just know you're not crazy for noticing it, and you're not alone. Anyway, during my final year of school, I was juggling a million things: classes, 2 part-time jobs, and an internship. One of my jobs was at a boutique perfume shop in the city. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I spent my days surrounded by beautiful fragrances, experimenting with scents when I could, and helping customers find their signature perfumes. For me, it wasn't just a job, it felt like a small step toward my dream. That's where I met Adrian. He came into the shop one afternoon, looking for a custom scent for a client. He was tall, polished, and had this easy confidence about him. At first, I thought he was just another wealthy guy who wanted something expensive to impress someone, but he surprised me. He actually seemed interested in the process, asking about the ingredients, how scents were layered, and what inspired my creation. We spent nearly an hour working on the perfect blend, and by the time he left, I was impressed by how down-to-earth he was. He wasn't flashy about his success, even though it was obvious he had money. He came back a week later to pick up the final product and, instead of just saying thanks and leaving, he stayed to chat. Over time, Adrian became a regular at the shop. He'd stop by to talk about business, creativity, or life in general. I learned that he ran a startup that had recently hit it big. He never flaunted it. He was more interested in hearing about my studies and my goals. No one had ever taken that kind of genuine interest in me before. Not my family, not anyone. Eventually he asked me out. I remember being so nervous because I didn't know if I was ready for anything serious. I had so much going on, and the idea of dating someone like Adrian felt intimidating, but he made me feel at ease. He didn't care that I was still a student working 2 jobs, he admired my drive and passion, and he made me feel seen in a way I never had before. Our relationship moved quickly, but it felt natural. Adrian was supportive in ways I wasn't used to. When I had late-night assignments, he'd send me takeout so I wouldn't forget to eat. When I was stressed about exams, he'd remind me to take breaks and breathe. He wasn't just my boyfriend, he became my biggest cheerleader. When Adrian proposed a year after we started dating, I was stunned. I knew we were in a good place, but I didn't expect it so soon. He planned this whole elaborate evening, dinner at a rooftop restaurant, soft music, candles, the works. When he pulled out the ring, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes because I finally felt like I was someone's first choice. Of course, when I told my parents, their reactions were predictable. My mom barely acknowledged the engagement before saying, "Wow, Adrian must be doing well. I hope he's taking good care of you." My dad's response was similar. "Well, at least you won't have to worry about money anymore." They didn't ask about the proposal, the wedding plans, or even how I felt. It was all about Adrian and what he could provide. At our engagement dinner, my mom leaned over and whispered, "You know, Adrian must have some friends. Veronica could use someone like him." I tried to brush it off as a one-time comment, but it wasn't. Every time I talked to my mom after that, she'd find a way to bring it up. "Have you talked to Adrian about introducing Veronica to anyone? Or Veronica's been so unlucky in love, maybe Adrian could help." It was like she couldn't stand the idea of me having something Veronica didn't. The wedding planning process was a nightmare. My mom acted more excited about what Adrian's side of the family was contributing than about the actual wedding. She'd say things like, "Well, at least they're paying for the venue. That's nice of them," as if it wasn't my wedding too. The wedding day itself was beautiful, but of course, Veronica couldn't just let me have my moment. She showed up in this over-the-top dress that looked more like something you'd wear to prom than to your sister's wedding. She spent half the night networking with Adrian's friends and colleagues, like she was trying to audition for a role in his life. And the comments? Oh my God, the comments. She'd joke loudly about how lucky I was to find someone like Adrian, saying things like, "Wow, Elena really hit the jackpot, didn't she?" Or "Adrian must have a soft spot for hardworking women." I could feel the backhanded compliments dripping with jealousy. I wasn't the shadow anymore, and Veronica couldn't handle it. I saw it in the way she acted around Adrian, overly friendly, always laughing at his jokes like they were the funniest thing in the world. At one point during the reception, I caught her cornering him by the bar, and it made my stomach turn. When I asked her later what they talked about, she shrugged and said, "Oh, nothing. Just thanking him for being so good to you." The honeymoon phase of my marriage was everything I wanted it to be, but my family's behavior lingered in the back of my mind. My mom kept pushing me to involve Veronica in Adrian's social circle, like it was my responsibility to find her a wealthy husband too. At first I thought I was imagining things. Like maybe I was being too sensitive or insecure, but then I started noticing how Veronica treated me differently. She stopped pretending to be supportive, and started making subtle digs about my relationship. If Adrian posted something sweet about me online, she'd leave a sarcastic comment like, "Guess we know who the favorite is now." Instead of celebrating with me, my family acted like I owed them something for my success. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have seen the warning signs. But at the time, I was just trying to enjoy this new chapter of my life, even if it meant ignoring the cracks forming under the surface. About a month into our marriage, Veronica started showing up unannounced. And when I say showing up, I don't mean popping by for a quick hello. I mean waltzing into my home like it was hers. She'd arrive mid-afternoon, always overdressed for no apparent reason. Heels, designer bags, a full face of makeup. It wasn't like we lived in a fancy neighborhood. Our townhouse was in a quiet suburban area, and most of our neighbors were the yoga pants and messy bun type. At first I tried to brush it off. Maybe she just wants to spend more time with me, I thought. But no, she wasn't coming to see me. She'd spend most of her time hovering around Adrian. She'd linger in the kitchen while he cooked. He loved making homemade pasta his thing, laughing at his jokes like she was auditioning for a rom-com. It made me so uncomfortable. I remember one day I was folding laundry in the living room when I overheard them in the kitchen. Adrian was explaining how he made his bolognese sauce, and Veronica was laughing so loudly you'd think he was a stand-up comedian. It wasn't just a polite chuckle. It was that kind of laugh, the kind that makes your stomach twist because you know it's not about the joke. I told Adrian how I felt. I even tried to make it sound casual. I said something like, "Hey, I love that Veronica's visiting, but maybe it's a bit much." He just shrugged and said, "She's your sister. She's probably just lonely." Lonely? Veronica wasn't lonely, she was bored. There's a difference. Things escalated when she started coming over even more frequently. Once, I came home from work to find her sitting on our couch with Adrian, eating takeout from our favorite place, like they were having a little date night. When I asked what she was doing there, she smiled and said, "Oh, I was in the neighborhood and figured I'd keep Adrian company since you were working late." That's when I started to notice other things. Veronica had this knack for finding reasons to touch Adrian, fixing his tie, brushing lint off his shoulder, leaning in a little too close when she talked to him. Adrian didn't seem to notice, or at least he pretended not to. One night, everything came crashing down. I had just gotten home from a long shift at the boutique. I walked into the house and heard them in the kitchen, Veronica laughing again, that same laugh. I stood there in the hallway frozen, just listening. I finally worked up the courage to walk in, and there they were, Veronica perched on one of the bar stools, leaning forward, while Adrian stood across from her with this stupid grin on his face. I don't even remember what they were talking about. All I remember is how my heart sank. Later that night I confronted Adrian. "What's going on with you and Veronica?" He looked at me like I was crazy. "What do you mean? She's your sister." "Exactly," I said. "So why does it feel like she's here for you and not me?" He denied everything, said I was overthinking it, said Veronica was just friendly and I needed to relax, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The final straw came a few weeks later. Adrian started coming home late. He always had an excuse: work dinners, meetings, errands. One night, he walked in the door at nearly midnight. He smelled like perfume. And not just any perfume, something floral and sweet, like jasmine and vanilla. I'm a perfumer, I know every scent in my collection, and that wasn't one of mine. I didn't even have to ask, he admitted it before I could get the words out. "Elena," he said, "Veronica and I are in love." In love. Those two words hit me like a freight train. My sister. My husband. I couldn't even process it. All I could think was how and why I didn't cry, not right away. I just stood there staring at him, while he mumbled something about how these things happen, and he didn't mean for it to happen. I felt like I was watching my life unravel in real time. The next day, I called my parents. I was desperate. I needed somewhere to stay while I figured out what to do. My mom answered the phone, and I explained everything. I told her I needed to come home, just for a little while. She hesitated. "Oh honey, I'd love to help, but the house is under renovation right now." "It's such a mess." Renovation? They'd lived in that house for 20 years and never renovated a thing. So, I called my dad. He gave me the same line: "It's just not a good time, sweetheart." You know how it is. I hung up the phone and just sat there, staring at the wall. My parents had never been there for me. Not really, but this was a new low. I wasn't just dealing with a betrayal from Adrienne and Veronica. I was being abandoned by my entire family. I spent that night in our guest bedroom, scrolling through apartment listings I couldn't afford and wondering how I'd gotten here. I felt completely alone. It took weeks. Weeks of overthinking, replaying every conversation, every interaction in my head, for me to finally put the pieces together. My parents had known about Veronica and Adrian's affair the whole time. They weren't just passively unaware, they had actively supported it. At first I didn't want to believe it. Who would? But the signs were all there, glaringly obvious now that I looked back. My parents brushing off my calls when I begged for a place to stay, my mom's vague excuses about the renovation, my dad's awkward tone like he was trying to avoid saying too much. They hadn't been protecting me. They'd been protecting her. Veronica, their golden child, could do no wrong in their eyes. Even when she stabbed her own sister in the back, they still prioritized her comfort over my pain. They didn't want me moving in because it would have been too messy for them. They didn't want to deal with the fallout of their blatant favoritism. I filed for divorce, and the process went quickly. Adrian had made me sign a prenup before marriage, so he ensured I walked away from this marriage with nothing. After everything fell apart, I was desperate for some kind of support, so I reached out to his parents. I didn't do it to air our dirty laundry. I just wanted to let them know what happened and maybe find some clarity. His mom was surprisingly kind to me, even admitting that she had her doubts about Veronica from the start. But apparently, Adrian didn't see it that way. He found out I had contacted his family and accused me of trying to turn them against him. He claimed I was stirring up drama and ruining his reputation, which is ironic considering the mess he made. As if that wasn't bad enough, Adrian took things a step further. It wasn't enough that he had destroyed my trust, my marriage, and my family. He decided to ruin my career too. I found out when I showed up for work at the boutique one morning, only to be called into the manager's office. My boss, who had always been supportive, suddenly couldn't make eye contact. She handed me a final paycheck and muttered something about restructuring and how things weren't working out. It didn't make sense until a coworker let it slip later. Adrienne had spoken to the owner, claiming I was causing drama that was bad for business. I was furious. I wanted to storm into his office, scream at him, demand answers. But I didn't. What was the point? He wasn't worth it. For days I sat in my new tiny apartment, staring at the walls and wondering what I was going to do. Rent was due soon, and without a job, I had no idea how I was going to pay it. I felt like the universe had ripped away everything I'd worked for. But then, one night, something clicked. I was scrolling through Instagram, looking at pictures of people I didn't even know living lives I couldn't afford, when I stumbled on a post about small businesses. It was a woman who had started her own candle-making company out of her kitchen. She talked about how she'd turned her passion into a career and built something from the ground up. I sat there holding my phone and thought, why not me? I had always dreamed of starting my own perfume line. But I'd kept pushing it aside because I didn't think I was ready. Well, if there was ever a time to take a risk, it was now. I had nothing left to lose. I took out a small loan, just enough to cover the basics, and used what little savings I had left. My apartment became my workspace. Word started to spread. One day, a small beauty blogger with a decent following posted a review, raving about how unique my scents were. Overnight, my Instagram blew up. The second year was a turning point. I started getting inquiries from boutiques that wanted to carry my perfume. I rented a studio in town, a far cry from working at my dining table. It wasn't much, just a room with enough space for my supplies and a little corner to meet clients. I even hired an assistant to help with the growing workload. By the end of that second year I was profitable, not just scraping by, but actually making enough to live comfortably and plan for the future. My perfumes were being talked about in small magazines and blogs, and customers from all over the country were placing orders. This business wasn't just a way to pay the bills, it was my way of taking back control of my life. Every bottle of perfume I created felt like a small victory, a reminder that I was capable of building something beautiful from the ashes of everything I'd lost. Then, out of nowhere, on one of those rainy, miserable afternoons where you just want to curl up with a cup of coffee and not deal with anyone, I was in my studio, packing up an order for a small boutique in Seattle, when I heard the bell on the door. At first I thought it was Mia, my assistant, coming back from the nearby Starbucks, or maybe a customer wandering in to browse, but no, it was her, Veronica. And she had a baby in her arms. I just froze. She looked awful. I mean, we're talking messy bun, dark circles, soaked through coat, and a baby bundled up in a onesie that had seen better days. For a second, I thought I was imagining it because why in the world would she be here, but nope, it was real. Elena, she said, her voice all shaky. I didn't know where else to go. I just stood there, staring at her. It had been 2 years, 2 whole years since I'd last seen her. The last time was at some family gathering where she and Adrienne were parading around like the king and queen of everything. Now she looked like life had kicked her down a few hundred notches. What do you want, Veronica? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She shifted the baby in her arms and gave me this pitiful look. I need help, she said finally. Adrienne left. I don't have anyone else to turn to. I swear I almost laughed. Adrienne left her. Wow. Shocking. Who could have predicted that one? Literally everyone except her. Adrienne left you? I said, raising an eyebrow. Gee, I wonder why. She winced but didn't argue. Elena, please, I know I've made mistakes. I know I hurt you. But I'm desperate. I have nowhere else to go. And then she said it. This is your nephew, she added, motioning to the baby. Don't you want to meet him? My nephew, right. I glanced at the baby. He looked innocent enough. But then I looked back at Veronica, the same sister who had blown up my life without a second thought, and any sympathy I might have felt disappeared. Why don't you call Adrienne? I asked. Isn't this his kid? Her face turned red, and she started stammering. Well, no he's not. Of course he wasn't. It all came spilling out after that. Apparently, after Veronica won Adrienne, she realized he wasn't exactly the dream husband she'd imagined. Sure, he had money, but he was also controlling and kind of a jerk. Shocking. So naturally, she started cheating on him. She kept draining his bank account to fund her lifestyle. Luxury bags, trips, all that. But when Adrienne found out she was cheating, he cut her off completely. Since then, she was trying to keep up appearances, buying designer clothes, and posting old vacation photos to make it look like her life was still perfect. But you can only fake it for so long. And when she came to me that day she was absolutely falling apart. Elena, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you. I have no money, no home, nothing. I can't do this on my own. I just stared at her. Part of me wanted to scream, are you kidding me? The same sister who took my husband, ruined my marriage and acted like I was nothing is now standing in my studio begging for help? You have some nerve, I said finally. You didn't care about me or my life when you were blowing it up, but now you want me to bail you out? She started sobbing harder, and honestly, I wasn't moved. This wasn't new. Veronica had always been good at turning on the waterworks to get what she wanted. I don't have anywhere else to go, she said again. That's not my problem, I replied. You made your choices, Veronica. Now live with them. Or go to your lovely parents. Just stay the hell out of my life, all of you. I walked to the door, opened it, and motioned for her to leave. She hesitated, standing there like she thought I'd suddenly changed my mind, but when she saw I wasn't budging, she clutched the baby tighter and walked out into the rain without another word. As the door shut behind her, I stood there for a minute, letting it all sink in. I didn't feel bad, not really, maybe for the baby sure but not for her. I went back to my desk and tried to focus on work but my brain wouldn't shut up. I kept thinking about how far I'd come since the mess she'd made of my life 2 years ago. Her showing up like that would have broken me. But now, I felt free. I don't owe Veronica anything. She made her bed, she can lie in it. I've spent too much time trying to clean up after her messes, and I'm done. I've always believed in karma. It might not come immediately but eventually people get what's coming to them. And let me tell you, karma didn't hold back. Not only with Veronica but also with Adrian, and even my parents. Adrian's business went downhill faster than a kid on a sled in January. After he left Veronica, she didn't go quietly. She dragged him all over social media, posting long dramatic rants about how he'd emotionally abused her and controlled her every move. Never mind that she was the one cheating on him while living off his money. The thing is, people talk, and word spreads fast in his industry. Potential investors backed out, business partners stopped answering his calls, and his reputation tanked. Adrian wasn't the saint he pretended to be, and people finally started seeing it. Last I heard, he sold his company for way less than it was worth, just to cut his losses and pay off debts. One day Adrian showed up out of nowhere. I was in my studio, testing a new blend, when he walked in like we were old friends. He looked different, less polished, more tired. He had this sad, almost desperate energy about him. He started with some awkward small talk, and then it came. I made a mistake, Elena. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. He went on about how Veronica had ruined his life, how he missed the way things used to be with me, how he was hoping we could start over. I didn't even let him finish. I just looked at him and said, Adrian, I built myself a whole new life, and there's no space for you in it. Then I told him to leave. The audacity of that man. Eventually Veronica had to move into a small apartment, in a not-so-great part of town. She now works at a call center, the kind of job she used to mock people for having. She spends most of her time ranting on social media about how unfair life is, blaming everyone but herself for how things turned out. The worst part. She still tries to act superior, posting passive-aggressive quotes like, some people are so lucky, but I guess not everyone deserves it. And my parents? Oh, they didn't come out unscathed either. When Veronica's life started falling apart, they did what they always do, bailed her out. They sold their house, a place they'd lived in for over 20 years, and used the money to cover her debts. They moved into a cramped condo on the outskirts of town, a far cry from the home they once took so much pride in. I heard they're struggling financially now. My dad had to pick up part-time work as a delivery driver. And my mom started sewing alterations out of their living room to make ends meet. They haven't called me once to apologize or even acknowledge what happened. Instead they send these weird guilt-trippy emails every few months, stuff like, family is all we have, Elena. You should reach out sometime. But you know what? I don't feel bad, not for any of them. As for me, things couldn't be better. My business is thriving in ways I never could have imagined. I opened my first storefront, a cozy little shop in Chicago, and it's been a hit. We've got customers coming in from all over, drawn by our personalized approach to creating sense. On a personal note, I've also moved on in the best way. I'm now engaged to Ethan. We're planning our wedding for next spring, a small ceremony with close friends and a few family members. And by family, I mean the chosen kind, not the ones who stabbed me in the back. We've already joked about how the reception will smell amazing because I'm custom blending a scent for the day. Anyway, that's my story. Life's a lot better when you cut out the toxicity and focus on yourself. I'm in such a good place now, and honestly, I wouldn't change a thing. It all led me here. Thanks for reading, Reddit. You've been my little therapy session today.